Live. Okay, so good evening everybody. My name is Johnny. Welcome to Allilon Education and Allilon Unplugged. So we have an interesting haircut to show you today. Let me just double check that you are live, and we are live. Let me just check with our associate over here. This is Danny. Are we live?
Yes, we are.
Perfect. Okay, because last week we had a bit of trouble, so I do apologise. But hopefully we won't have any interruption with the live stream today. What am I going to do today? Dan, would you mind turning the music down, the sound down a bit? Thank you. Okay, so today I have a very, very beautiful young lady who I'm going to be cutting. Last week, week one, we did something quite curly, quite textured, quite raw, lots of freehand. The week after that, we did something on a mannequin with quite a creative kind of haircut on a mannequin. Week after that, we did some quite classic-y type feeling of a shape, using different kind of graduations and stuff. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit kind of creative, but at the same time something that you can do in the salon tomorrow. So it's going to be like a salon creative type of shape. So let me run through what I'm going to do, where I'm going to start and how I'm going to progress. So if you look, what I did is I took a side parting from the forehead just off center, all the way back down, and I've gone to off center in the center back. So just above the occipital bone, a little bit to the left hand side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by taking vertical sections. I'm going to cut, I'm not sure whether I'll do a square cutting line or a round cutting line just yet. It all depends on how much weight I want to keep on the external shape, because we've got a very, very unusual head shape. You can't actually feel, obviously you can't feel it, but the mastoid process bones are very predominant and the occipital bone is quite predominant, but the crown area is very, very, very flat. So I've got a really unusual shape to work with, so I want to keep some length through here so I can create some texture later on, okay? So I'm going to start cutting, and if you want to come around this way, what I'll do, I'm going to start by taking, from here, I'll take a vertical section, the police are coming to get me, as you can hear. Welcome to London, everybody. Okay, so that's going to be my section number one. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a shape, but I need to make sure I maintain some kind of weight in this area here. So what I'm probably going to do, if you look at my body, because this will be interesting for you to see, if I keep the head in this position, what I have to do is I have to bend my spine in order for me to pick up the hair and keep my fingers square to the head and parallel to the head. So what I'm going to do, if you actually just tilt the head slightly, like this, then I'm able to keep my body straight and achieve the same result, but my spine doesn't bend. And what I'm going to do now, come really close, you can have a look at this hand. Look at this, look at the skin, watch. Get really close, watch. Look how flexible that skin is. So I need to be really mindful of my tension. So what I do in this scenario is I'm going to cut it so the shape is slightly tighter on the inside, but I'm releasing any kind of tension on the skin. I don't want to achieve any kind of tension. And I'm cutting quite a square cutting line to maintain length on the external shape. That way, I'm not interfering with this movement that the hair has, and I'm keeping an element of weight on the external shape. I'm going to continue taking vertical sections, working on the base with the same cutting line. So my number system will be 1, which is my initial guide, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so forth. And that's how I'm going to work it. And every single time, I'm going to make sure that I don't stretch the skin. Very, very, very important. So tonight, I would love for you guys to ask me lots of questions. I want to go home and I want to be mentally drained from answering as many of your questions as you can or would like to know. Anything you'd like to know. Something that I want you to focus on is the way I'm grooming the hair. So initially, I'm combing the hair this way to get it away from the hair that I'm not cutting. But at the same time, in order for my number system to work, the best thing to do before you actually start cutting is comb the section of the number of the guide in the direction in which you want the hair to go. So we're working 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. So basically I'm combing, before I cut it, I'm combing it from the back to the front, like this. So I lift the hair out so I get control over it, and then before I cut it, I come from the back. And every section, you're constantly combing it down. Every time you cut it, you comb it down. The main reason for this is that basically what you have to remember is the head is releasing heat constantly. So because the head is releasing heat, the root of the hair is drying as I'm working. So I need the roots to dry quite flat. So by combing it down into position, I'm making sure the hair dries nice and flat. And as you're going round, again, make sure you're counting your sections so you know how many sections you've cut. So far, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sections so far, okay? Now remember what we talked about a couple of weeks ago. The reason why it's important to count your sections is if you're going for something quite balanced, I need to know that, for example, from this point to this point, on the first side, I cut 10 sections, for example. So that way, on the following side, again, I need to cut 10 sections. And that way, I know I've got a consistent amount of hair in my fingers, and I've got a consistent amount of sections for both sides, which will help me with my balance. So as I'm cutting it, another thing I can do is using the DD spray. I use this on everybody I cut. It's DD spray, DD mist from Davines. And what you do is you spray it from a distance. And this is a beautiful cutting lotion. And I cut it, put the product in and then comb it down and let it start to set by itself, okay? So I'm going to continue this technique to the top of the ear, and then I'm going to stop and I'm going to change my technique. Now one thing that's going to be good to zoom in on, and if you come away and focus on my body, I'll be able to show you something. So, in order for me to make sure my back stays straight, I need to try and manipulate the head more. So, for example, as I'm working now, here, in order for me to get my fingers square, like this, look at my body. That's no good, yeah? But if I tilt the head back like this, my body can straighten up, and I've got exactly the same control, and my spine is straight. So Dami, if anybody has any questions, darling, feel free to interrupt me and let me know.
So we've got a question from Sam.
Hi Sam, where's Sam from?
Sam, it's not said.
He hasn't mentioned it. Okay, Sam. Hi Sam. Thank you for tuning in.
He said, do you need to follow the head shape?
At the moment, yes. At the moment I'm following the head shape, which means my horizontal shape is round, and in this scenario, my vertical shape is square because of the angle of my cutting line. Okay, and what's really important is not just the working clean on the hair that you're cutting, but working clean in relation to the hair that you're not cutting. That way I'm very, very focused on being in control of my shape. Now another thing you can do that to help you with your control is move your body with every section. So if you imagine that on the floor there is a clock, okay? So if you imagine on the back of the chair this is 6 o'clock, over here is 9 o'clock, obviously this is 8 o'clock and 7 o'clock. So what you do, you start off at 6, and then with every section you move 15 minutes like this. And by the time you come to here, you should be at 9 o'clock, okay? And that way, as long as you're pulling the hair to the center of your chest, every time to the middle of your chest, you're always going to be in control of the horizontal shape.
So Sam is from Hong Kong.
Hey Sam, how you doing? Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the live feed, and I hope we don't have any disruptions today again, like we did last week. Right, it's my last section. Get the head out, get the ear out of the way, tilt the head up, so that when my body can straighten up. Comb it out. Comb it once. Cut it once. Good. Okay. So now I've cut my shape all the way to the back of the ear. I'm going to stop. I'm then going to come around the front of the ear, this way. I'm going to stand in front. And I'm going to work backwards. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I need to manage and choose the length here correctly, because if you zoom in, you'll be able to see that the hair's got a little bit of a little jump there. It kind of tends to kick back a little bit, and it's quite fine through this area. Can you see? So what I need to do is I need to make sure the length is long enough to fill that space, or what I do is I change the angle of the zone like this, and that way this then becomes part of the fringe, so I won't have like a little bit of hair just sitting there not doing anything. Okay, on this front area now, my sections are going to be slightly diagonal, and I'm going to work a slight, still quite a flat cutting line, so the angle of the cutting line will still be quite square, which means I'll be building a corner on the top. And after, what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to put a really beautiful, quite a graphic outline in over the side of the temple and over the ear. So my number system on the side is 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so forth. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to speed up my process now that you've got the idea of what I'm doing. And a really important thing, when you're doing two separate shapes next to each other, so I've got one shape here and another shape here. So what I need is I need about 1 inch of hair to connect both shapes together. That's really important. The transition between one shape and the other shape needs to have a zone which will allow you to connect the two zones together. That's really, really imperative to be making sure the shape is fluid. And in this scenario, don't forget, comb it in the direction you want the guide to move. Comb it once. Be mindful of your tension. And then every single time, comb it down into place. You can use the ear to manipulate the hair as well. Yes, Tammy?
So Sherry D said, see you in November and Metro just registered.
Oh, bless.
Another question from Andreas.
Hi, Andreas.
Johnny, did your sections become slightly diagonal to vertical on the back left side?
So on the back, in the back, we did vertical sections all the way around like this. And in the front, we're doing diagonal, slightly, I'd say they're closer to vertical than they are horizontal when it comes to the diagonal section. And the reason for that, in this scenario, my vertical shape is being controlled by my elevation. Sorry. The vertical shape is being controlled by the elevation, the cutting line, and in this scenario, there is an element of over direction because of the angle of the cutting line, which is square. So I'm working back, and as I get to where the ear is, what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to change my sectioning pattern to enable me to connect the two zones together. You'll see what I mean in about 30 seconds. Okay, so now I've cut two separate angles. Now this inch of hair here will be my connection point. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go very, very close to horizontal, still diagonal, but closer to horizontal than to vertical. And I'm going to connect the two zones together using that little bit of 1 inch.
So someone asked, is layering or round graduation?
So in this scenario, because my cutting line will be square, and this is a really interesting conversation actually. When you're cutting a haircut, and this is a discussion that I've had with the senior team quite a lot. When you think about, for example, a square, let's think about a classic square layered shape, okay? So let's think about a shape which basically works like this. A square cutting line. We say, or we have said for many years, that this will be a square layer. But if you think about it, if you really think about it, there will be a point where the head rounds off, the layering will actually become graduation. Because what will happen is, okay, what is graduation? Graduation is a build-up of length and weight. Layering is obviously used to remove weight. So we're using, in theory, a square cutting line, and from here downwards it will be layered because it will be flattening out the shape. But from there onwards, because the length will gradually be getting longer, technically, internally here, it will actually be graduated. And it's up to us now to start to think a bit deeper than what we've been told or what we know from before. We really need to start to analyse things in a lot more depth. And to try and make it a bit clearer, we're using a square cutting line, and that's why I'm avoiding using words like layering and graduation. We're using a square cutting line to create a shape which is flatter where the head is protruding and heavier where the head rounds off.
Another question for you, Johnny, from Paul Norman Nielsen.
Who, sorry?
Paul Norman Nielsen.
Hi.
Do you prefer to use cutting lotion instead of water?
It's a very good question. It's a very, very good question. The problem with water is that it just evaporates and has leaves absolutely zero residue. With something like a DD mist or a cutting lotion, I mean every product company has their own version of a cutting lotion. But what I love about the Dalmas DD mist is that you do not really get a residue as such. You do have a lot of good control and you do get an element of obviously conditioning in there, but it doesn't get greasy and you can use it over and over and over again. And it really works in regards to managing the shape. Okay, now that I've cut that shape, I'm going to cross-check it and just make sure that the shape is super clean. Okay? And something that I was talking about last week is something that I really want to try and demonstrate today. Last week I was talking to everybody about working from wet to dry, the idea of not blow drying the hair and letting the hair sit exactly how it's cut. And I'm going to try my best today, all depends on the timing, I'm going to try my best today to work from wet to dry for you in order for you to really be able to see how achievable that actually is. Remember, be careful of the tension because you don't want the skin to stretch too much. And every time you cut it, just calm it down and let it do its thing. So here, on the side, what I'm going to do now is I want to carve some of the shape out. So I'm going to lift the hair around the ear and drop it down to the cheekbone area. Now, because I'm club cutting it, and I'm cutting a straight square line, sorry, it's a triangular line, but I'm cutting it really, really solid. The danger of doing that is you create a bit of a corner on the edge, which in this scenario, where the hair is quite dense, the shape becomes a little bit thatched. So what I'm going to do once it's fully dry is gently point into it to soften the amount of density there is that sits on that line. And behind the ear, let me show you a little trick actually. And if you don't mind coming here a minute. So, I'm going to work around the ear, okay? Now, people always struggle around the ear in regards to how to hold the ear, getting the client to hold the ear and things like that. I personally don't think it's nice to have somebody hold the ear. So, let me show you a little trick. If you can zoom in on my hands, and so what you do is you get the wide tooth of the comb, okay? You place it in the last crease. Then you place the teeth inside the first crease of your fingers like that. Okay? You hold it securely. Then what you do is you use your thumb to basically secure the ear down. And then you open and close your hand like this to enable you to cut the hair around the ear. Because it holds the hair into position. And you can really, really access the difficult area around the ear. That's a really good little tip for you all to be able to manage that area a lot better. So I'm only going to take the hair off around the ear. I'm not going to take away any of this at the moment, and I'm just going to gently take away any little excess. Now actually what I'm doing, if you look really closely, is I'm taking away some of the hair underneath the shape. So I'm actually going into the shape underneath. I'm using a chipping technique on my line, like this, and I'm supporting it with my finger. With this finger here, I'm resting my scissors on it like that, and I'm controlling it. And then by going slightly underneath the line, what I'm actually doing is taking away, I'm undercutting it, I suppose you could even argue. I'm taking some of the hair away underneath, so as it sits down, there's less hair sitting on that perimeter, on that external shape. And again, take that away. Okay, then around this temple area, I'm just going to comb the hair down and gently chip away where the eye socket is, just to open up the eye socket. I'm using a chipping technique, so it's quite soft. Good. Another little tip, obviously, is to remove all the hair that you've cut. That way you can really see what's left and what needs to come off.
So, John, we've got a question from Keegan Nelson.
Hey, Keegan.
On what areas of the head do you determine the amount of tension to use?
What a good question. So, okay, so really, my advice to you is don't always think about how much tension you use. Think about the consistency in which you're using it. In other words, if you're going to use a lot of tension, fine, because you're going to stretch the skin, but just make sure that you use a lot of tension the whole time and it's consistent tension. My personal advice would be try and avoid, there's different ways of looking at it, okay? There's tension in regards to the amount of pressure when you're pulling the hair. That's one version, this kind of pressure. And then there's pressure in regards to the actual securing of the hair pressure. So the securing of the hair pressure can be really strong, but the pressure in regards to the pulling, I would basically just lighten up a little bit, so that way you're in much more control with the skin and you're not really affecting it. Okay, so now, remember I want to keep some length around the crown, so I have some movement to it. I'm going to work quite square, just below where the crown area is. And notice I'm trying to work again, I'm trying to work without clips, okay? Because I want the haircut to be cut in a way where I'm in pure control and I don't have to section hair away. I can actually just work very, very cleanly. Okay, now I'll put the chair down as low as I can. I'm going to tilt the head to this side like this. I'm going to stand on top of the head and I'm going to come vertically down. Now this is always the tricky bit when you start the second zone, using the first zone as a guide, because if you get the first bit wrong, you'll make a mistake on the whole control of your balance. So what I do is I'll cut about 2 or 3 sections and then I'll cross-check it before I carry on to make sure I'm in the correct rhythm in regards to choices of length and controlling my balance.
So we've got another question from Kim Franklin Hickman.
Hey Kim.
She says, what angle do you hold the scissors when removing the hair on the skin to avoid cutting the skin?
Good question. Thanks, Kim. Okay, there's an old barbering trick that you can learn when it comes to using things like cutthroats and razors. And basically what it is you get a balloon and you put the lotion or the shaving lotion on the balloon and then you gently, gently carve or take the lotion away from the balloon. Obviously, if you cut the balloon blows up, and that's in principle, the skin being cut. So what you can do to train yourself, you can do a very similar thing, where basically you get a balloon, and you basically go over and over the balloon, and you keep trying to change the angle of your blade all the time, and you'll slowly train yourself to realise that certain angles of your blade will cut the balloon every time. So you need to get yourself to a point where basically you're doing things like this. You're basically pointing into like that, but you're not cutting yourself. Yeah? And the way to do that is to train yourself with a balloon. You train to understand when to stop. Yeah? It might look quite graphic, but if you train yourself in a certain way, you can really learn to become, it sounds a bit weird, to become one with the scissors. So it's impossible for you to make that kind of mistake. So to answer Kim's question, hopefully I'll answer it in the best way possible. Train yourself using a couple of balloons to manage your blades, and you will train yourself naturally to understand what angle is best in order for you not to cut the person or to cut the mannequin, or to, in your scenario, to cut the balloon.
She says thank you.
It's a pleasure, Don. Absolute pleasure. I just want to say quickly for everyone, I don't know how many people are tuning in, and I don't know if anybody is continually watching week on week, but I just want to say thank you for tuning in, because I'm really enjoying doing these Allilon Unplugged, and every week we're going to be changing it. Next week I'm planning on doing something quite classic. The following week I'm thinking about doing something quite barbered, something quite a play with some clippers and some scissors over comb. But then I'm also thinking about, in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to have a group session with all of the Allilon educators cutting hair, and me basically talking to them and asking them questions, and starting to introduce the whole of the team, because Allilon isn't about me or Pedro. Allilon is basically about a philosophy and a way of thinking, and a culture, and a group of people who all feel the same way about the industry, and challenging fundamentals and really growing knowledge and stuff. So I want to really, really expose the team and what it is the team do. And I also want to slowly get to the point where we start to have like some of our assistants showing you little bits of their training. Maybe there might be salon owners out there who are watching who might want to see what kind of training systems we use internally. So I'll get Kate to do like an internal staff training session for you guys to see. And we'll keep doing lots of different things and mixing it up, so you can see the kind of versatility of the company, as well as how many amazing people we're lucky enough to have working with us.
So another question for you, Johnny,
Okay.
from Andrew.
Okay, hi Andrew.
Johnny, do you think hairdressers can become more creative after a diagram course?
The best thing about a diagram course is not necessarily the fact that you'll be able to draw a creative haircut. It's more about understanding how to document your work, and also how to really, really understand your shape. So will it help you? Without a doubt. But will it help you on your fundamental work? Of course it will, as well as your creative. Don't just think of it as a creative tool. It's designed as a teaching tool. And one of the first things we focus on when you join Allilon, when you start our training, is to do that. Okay, so I'm happy with the balance so far. I'm going to continue working to where the head rounds off again. Okay, so I'm going to continue with the same vertical sectioning pattern with a square cutting line. And my number system is, again, it's 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and I'm constantly working around the shape. I'm combing the hair once and cutting the hair once. Two more sections, and I'm going to move on to the front area.
Sammy says thank you for doing these live feeds. This
Who's that?
Simply.
Oh, thank you. I mean, honestly, you know, people asked us why we're doing it, and the reality is, I don't know if anybody anybody following really understands the goal behind Allilon. As a company, we're really trying to penetrate and help people understand that knowledge has not stopped developing. It's only going to keep evolving and evolving and evolving and evolving. And it's up to us to challenge that knowledge and challenge what we've been taught and really try and understand that hair cutting itself, for example, has really evolved and it's constantly evolving. Our goal is to constantly share what we love about what we do. And that doesn't just mean, you know, the passion for hairdressing. It means sharing our knowledge. And if that means that we can use certain social medias to help people learn who maybe might find it hard to get to London or might find it hard to get access to Allilon, if we can help people understand the goal behind Allilon much quicker, then we're going to do that. And this was one idea that we come up with to hopefully help share, not just talk about sharing and say, yeah, we you know, we're a company that shares, but actually share. Is it a great business move? I don't know, and I don't care, to be honest. That's not what it's about. As a business, we'll make money doing our education, and we're doing very well doing what we do. So this for me isn't about making money. This for me is about really trying to make a difference and trying to get people to understand that they could be really special if they really want to be. And if all of us, if every single person in the industry who can have an impact on people, if all of the kind of senior people within our industry just share a little bit, just imagine how much of an effect we can have on people, how much of impact we can have on the industry. It's just, for me, it's a no-brainer. You know, business is business, but knowledge it should be for everybody, you know. Okay, so that's I'm coming on to my last side now. And on this side, I'm going to change it a little bit, okay? I'm going to go a lot tighter on this side, and I'm going to go a lot flatter. So I'm going to come around that way so you can see how I'm doing it. Now, this is quite interesting. Let me show you something that not a lot of people really think about. When you're cutting, and if you zoom in onto my hands. Okay, so try and think about what I'm saying in regards to balance. Let's just say, for talk's sake, we're going to cut both sides exactly the same balance, okay? And on this side, I cut the haircut with my fingertips facing the ceiling, okay? And on this side, I cut it, so my back straight, with my fingertips facing the floor, okay? The reality is that if I'm resting my fingers against the scalp, okay, my finger is wider down the bottom than it is at the top. So on that side, when I'm cutting it, my angle will actually be shorter internally and longer externally because of the width of my fingers. But on the opposite side, if I rest my fingers against the skin and cut it, I'm actually going to be going shorter externally and longer internally simply because of the width of my finger. So really think about, even though you might think you're getting the same balance, if your fingers are touching the skin and your fingers are not mirroring the opposite side, you're automatically going to be changing the angle of the cutting line. So one side will be layered and one side will be graduated. And that's a really, really important thing to really understand in regards to placement of fingers. So on this side, I'm going to go much tighter, and I'm going to start by taking really quite obvious diagonal sections, okay? I need to be careful the hair doesn't go really, really spiky. So I am still layering it even though I'm taking diagonal sections at the moment, because the angle of the cutting line is flat. I'm not building into a corner yet. So what I'm going to do is every section I'm going to start to round it off.
Johnny, so Keegan Nelson asked, I see you're using the widened teeth of the comb. When and why do you determine on what side of the comb to use?
Good question, good question. So, I don't know if you noticed, but I always take the sections, or not, I won't say always, 99% of the time, I take the section with the wide end of the comb. and then I comb it through with the tight end of the comb. Get down for me. So every time you take a section, if you do it with the wide end of the comb, what you find is you're able to really glide the comb through the hair easily because there's a lot of hair. But when you're cutting the hair, you'll have much more control if you comb it through with the tight end of the comb. Now realistically, when you're cutting this, you shouldn't have to recut the shape again. Once you've picked it up and cut it, you're done. Now you can see now I've started to build up into a little bit of a corner, and if you look very carefully, my sections have gone from diagonal, they've slowly started to pivot into almost vertical. Can you see? And that way, as I work back, I'll connect it into the hair behind the ear. So I tilt the head down, that way my back can straighten. So Andy, if you zoom out and zoom into my body, when the head is upright, yeah, my body is upright. When I go to cut it, I have to bend. So what I do is I tilt the head down, so my body now becomes taut and straight, and I'm able to actually be parallel to my shape again. Okay? Let me show you like that. Head down, I get to straighten up more. Head up, I have to bend and accommodate. And I don't want to have bad back problems when I get older than I am now. Okay, so every section now, I'm going to add some speed to it. I'm going to put my shape in quite quickly. I'm going to try and work a bit more salon time tonight. And slowly, slowly, what's going to happen is I'm going to work it back and end up connecting it in to the hair behind the centre back of the head. Again, I'm making sure I maintain my weight and my length in the external shape. Head down. Perfect, thank you. Good.
So you're now vertical?
Now I'm vertical now, yeah.
Ish,
yeah. I'm closer to vertical than I ever was before. But if you can see, I'm slowly, slowly, slowly getting more and more and more like that. Good question. Okay, so choice of length is always one of the hardest things to determine because you have to understand how the hair is going to respond and react based on the texture. My advice to you would be try and do as many haircuts as you can, because the more haircuts you get under the belt, the more mistakes you're going to make, the more you're going to learn. Because in the end, choice of length is all about thinking about your experience levels and thinking about the bend in the hair. If you really understand the choices of length, the haircut will work really mechanically by itself. If you struggle understanding choice of length, which, to be fair, is very, very hard to teach, the only thing that will teach that, really, if I'm completely honest, is experience. I can show you a little trick in regards to understanding the bend in the hair. I've shown quite a lot of you that before, but if it's your first time tuning in, I'll show you again. Alex, would you do me a favour? Would you please draw me on the blackboard, on the board, will you draw me the bend in the hair with the little bit so I can discuss it? Yeah. Okay, so I've got probably 2 more sections left, and then I'm going to cut the top and then I'm done.
So Megan wants to know, in terms of finger placement, do you decide on your hand position depending on what is more comfortable for you or what would you the best balance?
Okay, so really, whatever gives you more comfort will give you more control. Whatever gives you more control will give you better balance. So ideally, what I would aim for is I would really think about your body posture and how your finger positioning will either make your cutting approach either easier or harder. If you're physically more comfortable, you're going to definitely have a lot more control, which means your balance will be a lot more symmetrical if that's what you're aiming for. The last section, and the underneath is cut. Comb the hair down and let it do its thing. Now, I told you before, I'm going to work from wet to dry because I want to avoid doing too much blow drying, and I want you to show you how important it is to be able to cut hair from wet to dry, because I think it's an art form that's being lost completely, if I'm honest. And it's something that I'm quite passionate about reintroducing, or being part of the reintroduction of it. So all I'm going to do now, sorry Andy, is I'm just going to cross-check my shape, and as I cross-check, I'm going to lift my shape every time. And I've got to be careful of my tension in this area, because obviously this is the temple area, which is usually the most flexible.
So I've got two questions for you, Johnny.
Okay.
One from June White. I missed the start. You mapped out the cut before. If so, how disciplined are you sticking to it?
Okay, is that from Jean, did you say?
Jean White.
Jean White. Hi Jean, welcome. When I finish cutting this, I'm going to do what I did last week and the week before. I'm going to go over to the diagram board, and I'm going to draw the haircut for you so you can see exactly how I cut it and exactly what I did. Did I map it all out initially? Honestly, no, because I want to work quite free, and I wanted the haircut to be quite creative in regards to its approach. Did I know I was going to go a lot flatter? Yes, because I've experienced this particular shape before, and obviously I've worked with this head shape before, which is quite a beautiful head shape, but a challenging head shape. So I'm going to keep the outline on this side quite soft. I'm not going to carve it around the ear. Okay? And if you notice, as I'm combing the hair down, the heat from the head is starting to dry the hair into place. And even though I've cut a square cutting line, visually in the mirror, if you look carefully, it looks graduated. It looks like a graduated haircut, even though it's layered. And that's obviously because of the head shape. Okay, so now I'm going to work on the top area here. So far, basically, if I explain to you what I've done, I started in the back. I sectioned off from the top of the head in the recession area on the left-hand side all the way back and down. Okay. I worked a square cutting line on the base to the top of the ear, then came around the front and worked a slightly diagonal section pattern all the way through like this, and then a horizontal section pattern connecting the two techniques together. Okay, and what I'm doing now by lifting the hair like this is I'm allowing the hair to basically get some air inside it so the shape starts to dry. And this is really important. The more you cross-check your shape, the more you elevate it and lift it, the more it will start to dry because the air will get inside the shape. And all this hair here, you can lift it up and then gently push it down and let it start to dry all by itself, however it wants to sit. Try not to over-style it. Try and just let it be what it wants to be. And if you look in the mirror, basically when you're cutting hair, I explained this last week, but I'll do it again. When you comb the hair up like this, can you see the line underneath? If that line underneath the comb stays clean, your technique is clean. That's really, really important. So if you look carefully, look at the line underneath here, underneath the comb here. If this line here is clean, it means your technique's clean. Yeah? I'll do one more time.
Johnny wants to know how was the head shape and why you chose to cut square at the back and round at the side.
Sorry, one more time the question?
He wants to know how was the head shape and why you chose to cut square at the back and round at the side.
Okay, so basically on this particular head shape, the mastoid process area, so this is the mastoid process area, these bones are really, really, really predominant. And the occipital bone, just underneath it, it really hollows in and it becomes very indented. So I need to make sure that I keep an element of length in that area to try and almost disguise the surface of the head. One of the things that will help you understand choice of length, which is something that was discussed before, I'll talk to you about it now. Try and imagine this, okay? If you've got a 16-year-old kid in your salon, okay? And you turn around to that kid and say, listen Simon, we're talking about little Simon now. Listen Simon, understanding choice of length, understanding the head shape will help you understand choice of length. Simon's going to go, yeah, that's great, I don't really understand. Because hairdressers are very visual people, so if you tell them a story, you'll help them understand how to explain choice of length better. So try and get them to imagine this. Try and get them to imagine their garden at home or their lawn at home or park, okay? If the ground is all lumpy bumpy and you grade the grass down really short, you're going to see all the lumpy bumpy surface. But if you leave the grass a little bit longer, the grass will basically disguise the surface of the floor. So you get a much smoother finish. And it works the same way in regards to choice of length. If you want to hide and disguise the surface, choice of length will either hide it or expose it. Okay, so through the top area now, I'm going to keep quite a lot of the length in the front, but I do want to create a little more texture internally through here. So I'm going to start at the crown, which is obviously here. Head down from above. Okay, and I'm going to work pivoting sections. So I'm going to rotate from this point basically.
Still with your comb?
No problem. No problem. So my comb, my sections are going to basically do this. Like a clock, okay? Okay. And comb the hair up. And I want to keep quite a lot of the length that sits over the shape, okay? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a chipping technique, so it's quite raw finish. So a chipping technique, basically, are short little triangles, can you see? And what it does, it creates a solid but slightly broken shape, okay? And that's going to create texture for me and movement. So my sections are going to pivot. And then my number system at the moment will be 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. And then I will get to a point where I'll change the number system and start to introduce over direction. But I'll get there in a second. Let me just quickly put this shape in, because I really want tonight to work quite fluidly. Even though I keep stopping to talk to you, I want to work quite fluidly. That way we've got time to have a little bit of a discussion at the end if you've got any questions, because often during the process, I know that we talk for quite a long time about different stuff, and I want to be quite specific. Can everyone hear me, by the way? Just write to Dami and let her know if you can hear me okay, and if you need me to talk louder.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
That was a question asked.
Oh, what about loud? Oh yeah? Okay.
What products do you normally use in the salon?
Okay, so if you've never been to, who's that from? Who's that question from?
Sorin?
Sorin?
Sorin, yeah.
Okay, hi Sorin. So basically, at Enna Salon is based in London, okay? And Enna Salon is basically the flagship salon for a product company called Davas, which is an Italian brand. It's a beautiful brand, an absolutely beautiful brand. It has a really, really pure philosophy, which mirrors the Enna philosophy. It's all about sustainability. It's all about trying to really be conscious of our carbon footprint and the impact we're having on the environment. It's an amazing brand, and we are the flagship salon for that brand, and we work very, very, very closely with them. And what's really interesting about Davos, and what I love about Davos, is they have this event every year called the Worldwide Hair Tour, which basically in every single year is in a different capital city. And what's interesting is that you have an event that they put on with over 2,000 people there, sometimes more. And there's about 79 countries within this 2,000 people. And what's so amazing about it is, even though you've got 79 countries with all these different people from different countries who can't even communicate, they have one common link, and that's obviously the product company that they're associated with. And you find that they're a very similar breed of person. They're usually very, very, very warm, very friendly, and they have a sense of pride in regards to protecting the ecosystem and protecting the planet. And I love being at the Worldwide Hair Tour because I find it very, very inspirational, because you don't know everybody, but you feel like you know everybody. I love that. So we use all their styling products and their colour products. So I've worked all the way around the crown. And I'm going to slowly pivot around this way now. Move my body around so it'll be easy for you to see. I'm ignoring the hair underneath. And what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to really start to run my fingers through the hair and introduce freehand to the shape, and lots of different kind of personalizing techniques to loosen texture and to help the shape become much more fluid. Can I just also, now that obviously we're live, I'd like to just say a few thank yous, because every week we've got Andy behind the camera who basically stands there arms shaking, trying to get it all, you know.
Sorry if I was a bit juddery.
Trying to get you guys to see as best you can. I just want to say thank you to Andy for being here with us and for doing an amazing job with the camera, and obviously helping you guys see what it is that we're trying to share with you guys. So big round of applause to Andy, everybody. Okay. These last two sections, and then I'm going to change my cutting angle. So what this has done now is created quite a lot of shorter hair on the top to create lots of texture, but at the same time I want to keep a lot of the length in the front.
So Johnny,
Mm-hmm. Andre.
I'm saying his name right to the eye.
Okay.
Andre wants to know how the cutting technique can influence the movement of the hair. Is it not the natural texture of the hair that influences the movement?
That's a really good question, mate. It's both of them, to be honest. That's why they need to work in sync. There will be a situation where if you only club cut, if you only cut straight lines, the shape will feel very compact. Whereas if you actually use different kind of personalising cutting techniques, the shape will loosen up and start to move a little bit differently. The texture obviously does play a big part in it. The more texture the hair naturally has, the more freehand you tend to use, or the more personalising, should we say, you tend to use, the more of an impact that has on how free the hair becomes. So the more clean you work, the more technical and sharper you work, the more solid the shapes tend to be.
Isn't it, especially with shorter and longer lengths, they kind of give a slightly different texture as well, don't they?
Yeah, you get a different
like
bend.
shorter, kind of croppy hair actually can look a little...
Yeah, I mean, ideally...
It has a slightly different texture than a longer kind of sweeping length, and to combine the two, that would actually create difference of texture.
Yeah. I mean, really, you need to think about the bend in the hair. So let me do that. Let me show you about the bend in the hair. Let me just follow me. So if this is the root, okay, and this is a bend in the hair, how you should try to think about it is, depending on where you're choosing the length, or depending on how the hair will react. So, for example, if you imagine we cut the hair at this length here, the hair will flick away from the face. Imagine the face is here looking at you. If I cut it there, the hair will flick away. If I cut it there, it will flick away. If I cut it here, it will start to tuck into the face. So in. If I tuck it here, it will just sit quite thatched away from the face, and then flick out, flick out, flick out, in. And if I cut it here, there won't be any bend, it will just hug the head. So understanding the bend in the hair will help you understand whether the haircut will sit properly. In regards to the angle of the scissors when it's being cut, all that's doing is changing the amount of density and how compact the shape is. So if something's cut really, really mechanically and really clean, it's going to be quite solid as a shape. Pointing and chipping and slicing, all these things are relative. They're all really important. It's just about understanding when, why and how. So when to do it, when not to do it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow the hair to start to dry very loosely, and I'm going to start to use freehand. I'm not going to use my comb while I personalise. So I comb it once, and then if you watch carefully, I'm going to start to basically slice into the hair and loosen the hair. So this technique now is a form of layering as I'm removing weight, and I'm using the tips of my scissors to just soften the density of the hair. So if I slow it down, you basically gently close the blades as you leave, like that. And what that does, it just softens it through. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my scissors to remove any little excess. But I want the shape to be quite soft and very feminine. I don't want there to be hard lines. I could put a hard line in it, and to be fair, one of the things that we spoke about before I started cutting was potentially putting a hard line into it, but I don't know, I'm quite into softening things through at the moment.
So David would like to know what product is in the hair.
Okay, so at the moment, David, I'm only using Day-Day Mist, which is a Davines product. That's the only product I'm using at the moment within the hair. And I'm allowing it to dry with the product in.
And Rennie's asked, can you show us Andy behind the camera, please?
Yeah, he's really cute, ladies. Get ready. Andy, give him a little show, mate. She's asking. The girls are asking. I think Andy's a little bit shy, ladies. How many ladies want to see what Andy looks like? He's hot, believe me. Think kind of, what can we say? The Rock, the wrestler.
I'd say a little bit like Richard Avedon.
There you go, that's exactly who you look like.
Slightly fatter.
No, say cuddly.
A healthy Richard Avedon.
Say cuddly. Andy's very cuddly, but ladies...
Or you could say, I don't know, a very fit Nicky Clark.
I can see that, I can see that. It's the hair, it's the hair. Okay, so I'm going to start to move the hair around now, so it starts to dry, okay? And I'm going to start to use a bit more of a chipping technique and a pointing technique. So watch this. Now that I've started to work the outline, can you see how, because of the bones here, the shape becomes quite predominant? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to freehand and point into these areas to diffuse the weight. Now there's different ways of doing this. One way is to use the comb, to elevate the hair in the comb, and then gently point through the hair like this. That's one way. But this necessarily isn't freehand, because freehand obviously means that you're not actually using anything apart from one hand and one pair of scissors. In this scenario, I'm using a pointing technique, and it's more of a personalizing technique rather than freehand.
So, Johnny, Natasha would like to know, do you believe in using thinning scissors? If yes, where and with what hair texture do you recommend to use it?
Okay, so thinning scissors are a great tool to use. If you don't have to use it, if it's not necessary, I personally believe you can achieve everything with one pair of scissors and one comb. With this, you can thin it out, you can make it solid, you can soften, you can do everything you need. You can razor cut it with a scissor, you can do anything you need with just this. Do I think it's the wrong or it's a bad tool? No. Because it's not the tool that's the problem, it's the person. This could be the worst tool in the world if you don't know what you're doing with it. So, I don't think it's the tool that's the problem. When would I use it? I'd probably use it in a scenario, maybe if I was doing like a fashion show or a shoot and I wanted to reduce weight very quickly. You could probably use it at that point, but traditionally I wouldn't necessarily use it as part of my repertoire, only because I don't feel like I need to. But part of the Allilon philosophy is that it's not the tool that's the problem, it's the person using the tool that's the problem. So as long as people understand when, why and how, so for example, when to use a certain tool, when not to use it. If you're going to use it, okay, well why? Why should you use it? Why should you not use it? And then if you've understood when and why, then you've got to think about, well, how? How should you and how should you not use it? And if you understand all these principles, the reason, the decision making, then what you're going to find is that you'll be able to make the right decisions and get the shape doing what you want it to do. Notice now that I'm trying to let the air circulate inside the hair while I'm working it. And I'm going to start to use a lot more pointing technique on the inside of the hair to loosen it up. Now the hair's quite wet, so I need to be careful how much I'm pointing right now, because I don't want to make holes in my shape, because the hair sticks together when it's wet. So I'm basically just going to go a little bit deeper. The deeper you go, the more weight you remove and the softer the shape becomes.
So Johnny, Kate from Katie Bernard, South Africa wants to know, which part of the scissors do you use to cut, the tip or the knuckle?
Okay, so if you're using a slicing technique, so I'll show you a slicing technique in a minute. A slicing technique will tend to create more of a, will tend to need more of a, the knuckle of the blade. In other words, that's the knuckle of the blade. So we'll tend to use more of the knuckle of the blade. A pointing technique tends to use the tips of the scissors. I don't know if you notice when we cut hair at Allilon, we use the ends of the scissors really quite a lot. We use the tips of the scissors quite a lot to create softness and movement within the hair. Just want to get the air inside the haircut so it starts to dry. Now by drying it like this, I'll allow the hair and the haircut to be the only thing that controls it. So in a minute, once the hair is a bit drier, I'll be able to really introduce freehand a lot more and pointing and stuff to really soften the hair. Good. Okay. Now, what you do here is you calm the hair down, and if you zoom in the mirror, you calm the hair down like this, and then what you do is you practice pointing into the hair. And what this does, it just softens through the mechanics because the hair is so dense. The hair is so thick, it can really afford to be softened through. So at the moment, I'm not worried about my disconnection. I'm going to point into that loads in a minute. I'm focused more on the head shape and how that's affecting my choice of length. So again, like I showed you before, don't be scared to really point into the hair. And be mindful of where the blades are stopping. And that's that, you know, I was showing you before to practice with the balloon. This is why, because obviously by doing this, you don't want to obviously cut the customer. But it's good to use your mirror, because when you use your mirror and you're not looking at it, you can really see the weight distribution, the weight leaving the hair. See, I'm getting a much flatter silhouette now. If you look at it from a side profile, it's becoming much flatter as before. It was looking a bit kind of bulky and a bit dense. And I'm going to constantly move the hair around now, so the hair starts to really dry. And as it moves around, I'll be able to see what needs to happen. So you can start to see the shape evolve now. Okay, now I'm going to start to freehand the inside shape. So now we're talking about slicing. Okay, so I'm going to use the knuckle of the blade, okay, which is that point now. Okay, I'm going to open and close my scissors barely, and I'm going to start to really gently slice the hair through. And once you've sliced it once, comb the hair through. Look at how much is left and go again. And then what you can do is you can change the angle of the blade. So now I'm slicing with the tips of the hair. This is with the tips now, just to really soften that edge. And again, the same on the other side. Comb the hair down. First use a knuckle. And then start to use the tips. What will happen is it will start to blend into the shape underneath, into your clean mechanics. Because there's nothing worse than having this connection, which is really, really obviously disconnected. And you can really see the fact that the zones aren't fluid. Because I don't want it to look like two haircuts. I want it to look like one haircut, but combined in two different ways. And just by doing all that, it just helps the shape integrate better, but it allows me to have something I can play with. And you can see it's still here, it's not sitting right here. It's still too lumpy. So now, I'm going to come here. So this obviously is a chipping technique and a slicing technique, which will allow the hair to move quite freely.
So Denise has asked a question, but unfortunately it's in a different language, so if you could please translate.
Okay, you're going to Google Translate it? So, next week I'm thinking about doing a kind of like cutting a beautiful line into someone's hair, and then maybe kind of graduating it through, so maybe focusing more on graduation and building the shape up rather than loosening and softening the shape like I am today. I need to draw this haircut for you to really be able to understand how the shape was cut. And I'll do that for you in a second. Now this middle panel I haven't cut basically, this solid panel in the centre. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut that, but I'm going to cut that using lots and lots and lots of freehand. So watch what I'm going to do now. So with that centre panel, I'm going to start by slicing and pointing into it like this to really remove the bulk, okay? And then I'll show you what I'm going to do, which is going to increase the amount of texture we have. Okay, so watch now. I'm going to take horizontal sections, okay? I'm going to comb the hair through. I'm not going to do it around the hairline. I'm going to leave the hairline out, okay? I'm going to leave this hairline out. I'm going to come back another centimetre, comb the hair down, and then I'm going to basically just point into the hair like this. And what that's going to do is going to create all these little shorter hairs, so that way when I texturise it after, the hair stands on end a bit more. It has a bit more of a support mechanism. So comb the hair down again. And this basically will create a bit more texture. And this is a bit like using a thinning scissor. I love the texture it's going to give me. I love this movement in the front. Okay, so just for the interest of time, sorry Dave, I'll come back to you. Just literally for the interest of time, I'm not going to use the head, I'm not going to use the brush, I'm just going to use the hairdryer just to speed it up a little bit. Dan, do you have a question?
Yes, Tommy Kenneth wants to know when's the new collection out?
Who was that?
Tommy.
Tonic?
Yes, yeah.
Bit of a secret, but we shot the collection last week. Andy did an amazing job shooting it. We had some great models, some great hair. We're going to be releasing it in March in Chile for the first time. And then once we release it in Chile for the first time, we'll then release it in general to the public. I think people will like this one. This one is a bit, how would I explain it? It's a bit wiggly.
It's softer.
It's softer. It's a bit wiggly. So, it's going to slice through all the hair, point into the hair wherever I feel it feels a bit dense.
So Johnny, after this video is finished, it will be on the Allilon Education Facebook page, is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
So it'll be posted for everybody to actually to review and see.
For anybody who's tuning in now, because obviously we appreciate that you're all in different countries, different time zones, but if anyone's tuning in now, you will be able to see the whole thing from start to finish, hopefully as long as there's been no interruption to the service today. So now I'm just going to really start to personalise the shape and take quite big chunks out of my technique to really loosen it up. Because that way when I put my wax in and my dry dust in a minute, the shape will be a lot looser and a lot lighter. Have we got any of, you know, the Angelo's powder with the actual duster? You grab some for me. So now, I'm going to start to get my fingers in there now. I start to really loosen the shape up, move it around, and see how I like to dress it. And also, just keep removing density because the hair is so dense. When you cut a mechanical shaping hair like this, if you don't personalise it, within 2-3 weeks, it feels like a hat, and that's not something we want to create for her. I mean, she's got a beautiful face. Do you know what I mean? So I really want the hair cut, apart from the fact she's got hair on it now, where I've been cutting her hair. Voilà. She looks like me now. Squeak. Okay. And if you notice, I don't know if you've noticed, but I keep using my mirror constantly, okay? Because the mirror never lies. If ever you're struggling with your haircut, or if ever you're thinking, I'm not sure how it's feeling, or I'm not sure, you know, about the densities or whatever, just use your mirror. Because your mirror will tell you the truth. Now I could, in theory, if I wanted to be more graphic, I could carve it all around here, but I don't need to. When I get product in it, I can just tuck it and it will be a bit softer, a bit more feminine looking. Now when you're doing this, just get your fingers like claws, and just do small circular motions like this. And what will happen is the air will get inside the head, and the texture will naturally come out. So 2 more minutes of personalising, just to make sure I'm happy with the result of the haircut. Don't be scared to really get in there and loosen the haircut up, because you want the hair to move, you want there to be texture. You know, I've worked in mechanical shape, I've got that. So now's the time where, the only time when I hate when people do this is when they haven't put a technical shape in at the beginning, because this can hide bad technique. But if you put a technical shape in the beginning and then you want to go crazy on it after, no problem, because you've achieved the basic fundamentals that are going to support the haircut for a larger period of time. Good. Okay. Can I? So I'm going to start to style the hair now with some product. Still a little bit dense. Still a little bit dense. Okay, I just need that one, please. Can I borrow that? And I'm also going to need some of the wax that you put in the middle one. Good. Okay. I've finished my shape.
So question from AJ.
AJ.
How would one know when to stop texturising?
What a great question. Before I answer that, AJ, I'm going to use some of your hair assistant. It's basically the volume creator. It's a product done by Angelo Seminara in association with Davinas. And what it is, you actually get like a duster that you can put it on. But I quite like to basically gently loosen it up like this. And it feels a bit like snowflakes, which I think is quite pretty. But basically, it's a really good dust to create texture. And it makes the hair feel a bit dirtier. And then, I'm going to use a little bit of this. It's by Davinas, okay? It's a strong moulding clay. And what you do is use a little bit of this in your hand. And also, a tiny bit of this. Okay, so this is again by Davinas. This is basically the forming pomade, okay? Take a secondary finger, place a little bit of that one. This one's a bit more oilier than this one, okay? And then what you do, put the oily one first, because it makes it more slippery, and the thicker one second, and really, really, really work it in. Make it really warm, and then put it on all of the shape underneath. And then start to style the hair.
Johnny, so some like to know, does the model have a lot of hair or just want to create a new texture?
Now, if I'm honest, we've got very, 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 very dense hair. And by being able to play with it like this, I'm allowed to soften the movement, create the texture. I really want it to flatten the shape a little bit, keep it soft. I didn't want it too heavy feeling. I'm going to use a tiny, tiny bit of oil, which is again is another Davines product. And I'm going to work this, I'm going to literally 3 pumps. Okay? And I'm going to work this everywhere, just to give it an element of shine. Now, I can style this any way I want. I can style it away from the face. I can style it away from the face a little bit quiffy if I want. Because I've got the dust in it, I can style it however I want. I can go up, okay? So it's a bit more quiffy and a bit more dress looking. That's one way of styling the shape. Head down for me. And I can go for something a bit more kind of 70s, kind of teddy boy, kind of quiffy type look. That's one way of styling it. Another way of styling it, which is what I prefer, which is I think slightly more modern, is kind of down with a bit of a cheeky kind of fringy area. And because she's got beautiful eyes, it just hugs the eyes, which I think is quite pretty. I don't know how they prefer it on camera, but I like the idea of it being slightly flexible. And because one side is slightly softer on the edge, and one side is slightly graphic on the edge.
Just turn it side profile again on the other side.
Yeah, on the other side. Slightly softer. And another little good tip I'd give them, with their hands, if they do this, if they want to create softness, just tell them to make their claw, I'll tell them, to make their claw, do the circles, and that way you get a bit of back palming in there. And then with your fingers, you pick the hair up and just gently, just twist the hair like this. Just twist it. And what it does, it just creates an element of softness. Now, you can style it lots, or you can leave it without really being styled. It's up to you, really. Okay, I'm going to draw you the haircut now. So, I don't know if you've got any head shoots at home or wherever you're at. If you want to copy my head shoot while I'm drawing it, you can. Fingers in there as well. You get your fingers in. Okay, follow me, Andy. Do me a favour. Will you keep here on my lady for me? Okay. So basically, my section came around. My first section there. And then I took vertical sections like this. I'm going to draw this really quickly today, okay? Just because I know you guys have been watching for quite a while now. So do excuse me if it's a little bit messy. I do apologise. And then we took horizontal sections like this, combining the two shapes together. So that was our initial sectioning pattern, okay? On the other side, the section came round like that. And again, my sections came round. They followed all the way round to about there. And then my sections are they started off quite horizontal. Then they slowly started to pivot into more of a diagonal type section, and then through into vertical. Okay, let me do the back. So the back came across like this. Oh no, it didn't. It came across quite square, sorry. I took a square bit across the ground, didn't I? Sorry guys, let me do this properly for you. I came across quite square, didn't I? And then when I got to about there, I connected it through. Sorry, I don't mean to confuse myself and to confuse you guys. Okay. There we go with that. My number system was as follows. 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4 for the majority of the haircut, okay? My guides were moving backwards, like that. And then they were moving around like this. So that was the direction in which the number system was being shown. And again, like this, my number system travelled up like that. And it came round like that. And then here, my number system came from the front to the back like that. And then from the back to the front like that. And then my elevation meant my number system went up like that. Okay. So my cutting lines were slightly square and quite tight, and that way I keep a little bit of length on the external shape. Okay. My outline on this side came down the ear and followed the contour of the hairline, and the back was soft, and that soft exterior shape. On this side, the whole of the exterior shape was soft, but it was soft cut around and over the ear like that. Okay, and then we carved the hairline out. That was the exterior shape. The outline through the back was nice and soft. I didn't actually put that much of an outline into the haircut, I just got rid of the neck hair. Then around the top, I basically used pivoting sections. Like this. And I did that, to be fair, most of the top, like this. Okay, and my number system, I basically rotated all the way around like this. So that was the direction in which the guide moved within my haircut. My cutting line was like this through the top. It went with a chipping technique, it went shorter to slightly longer like that, and it continued through the top like that, but it stopped about there. Okay, through the fringe, through the top area here, I basically took horizontal sections like this. So, across the top like this. And I used a pointing technique, quite deep, and lots of freehand to create a softer shape. My section at the crown was pivoting, so I'll pivot like that, just to make it a bit easier for everyone to understand. Okay, good. Okay. So does anyone have any questions before we sign off for tonight and our Allilon Unplugged? Does anyone have any questions, Danny?
Everyone, if you could just show your appreciation, thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Let me let her stand up. Now get ready because she makes me look absolutely ridiculously tiny. Stand up from above. Feel really butch. I feel really butch. Okay? Again, so it's a haircut which we can dress in so many ways, we can design it in so many ways. I like the fact that when you scrunch it with your fingers, it looks quite dusty and a bit, you can move it around constantly because of the way we've done it. But I love, my favourite thing is that it's understated, but it's softer on one side, so visually, you get like a bit confused when you see that the other side is slightly more graphic in regards to the definition of it. And you don't really notice it, to be fair, unless you really focus. But I hope you like my haircut. I hope you like my haircut.
I love that.
And I will see you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.